Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
Washington is expressing anger after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a YouTube video criticizing Israel's opponents. In the video, he said those who claim that Jewish communities in the so-called West Bank are stumbling blocks to peace are in effect calling for ethnic cleansing.
No one would seriously claim that the nearly 2 million Arabs living inside Israel, that they're an obstacle to peace. That's because they aren't. On the contrary, Israel's diversity shows its openness and readiness for peace. Yet the Palestinian leadership actually demands a Palestinian state with one precondition: no Jews. There's a phrase for that. It's called ethnic cleansing. And this demand is outrageous. It's even more outrageous that the world doesn't find this outrageous.
Department spokeswoman Elizabeth Trudeau said that using the terminology of ethnic cleansing for those who oppose Israeli communities in the West Bank is, quote, inappropriate. Netanyahu pointed out that the West Bank is really Judea and Samaria, the biblical ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. And he says ethnic cleansing for peace is absurd.
Well, China says it will begin joint naval drills with Russia on Monday in the disputed South China Sea. According to the Chinese Navy, the 8-day drills will cover defense, rescue, and anti-submarine operations. China says the drills are routine exercises to bolster cooperation with Russia, stressing that they're not aimed at any other country. The drills come at a time of deep tensions in the South China Sea following a Hague-based court ruling against Beijing. The ruling said China has no historic rights to the sea and opposed its island-building activities there. The U.S. has said that the ruling is binding, but Beijing has rejected the verdict and accuses Washington of stoking tensions.
Early today, someone set fire to the mosque where the Orlando nightclub shooter once worshipped. Surveillance video showed someone fleeing the Islamic center of Fort Pierce, Florida. There was extensive damage. No one was injured. In June, Omar Mateen murdered 49 people at the Pulse nightclub before police killed him. He claimed to have been motivated by ISIS.
Hundreds of people are objecting to two proposed monuments at the Arkansas state capitol. One of them, the Ten Commandments, and the other, a Satan monument. More than 200 calls were received through a hotline set up for public comments. Most of the calls were in objection to the Satan monument, but others argued that neither statue belongs on public property. The Capitol Arts and Grounds Commission is set to discuss the proposals on Tuesday.
To Turkey now, where 48 people, including 2 police officers, have been wounded in a car bomb explosion in the eastern city of Van. Authorities say the bomb exploded outside the ruling Justice and Development Party, or AKP, headquarters on Monday. The bombing comes on the first day of the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha. Turkish officials have blamed the attack on the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, which is listed as a terror group by the Turkish government. However, no group has claimed responsibility for the bombing.
Tensions are high after a new report that North Korea is capable of setting off another nuclear device at any time. A South Korean official says the communist country still has unused devices at its main atomic test site. North Korea detonated its 5th and most powerful bomb just 3 days ago. The country's repeated nuclear tests are raising worries that it's developing deadly warheads. President Obama has said the United States will work to toughen sanctions on North Korea.
2 American B-1B bombers have flown over South Korea as a warning to the neighboring Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The nuclear-capable supersonic aircraft were sent in a show of force after Pyongyang's recent nuclear test. They came within 120 kilometers of the border. The move was also aimed at easing public anxiety in South Korea. Earlier, our correspondent Shane Hom in Seoul told us the flyover was a symbolic move to warn the DPRK leadership after its latest nuclear test.
A Paris judge has charged 3 women with terrorism. Investigators believe the women are part of an ISIS female commando unit. They were allegedly planning deadly terror attacks in France and were linked to an abandoned car full of explosives near the Notre Dame Cathedral. Meanwhile, authorities arrested a 15-year-old boy who is suspected of plotting a knife attack against civilians in the streets of Paris.
Now, U.S. and Israel have signed a record new pact under which Washington will give Tel Aviv $38 billion in military aid. A 10-year pact is the biggest pledge of U.S. military assistance ever made to any foreign party. New aid package for the first time will include money for Israel's missile systems. It calls for at least $3.8 billion a year in aid, up from $3.1 billion under the current pact, which will expire in 2018. Israel has been the largest recipient of U.S. foreign assistance since the Second World War. America's military aid to the Israeli regime has amounted to over $124 billion since it began back in 1962.
The U.S. and Russia are cooperating on Syria. Today, the ceasefire worked out by both gave us a rare look at the remains of Aleppo, Syria's largest city. With no bombs falling for a second day, children ventured into the street. But 275,000 residents are in dire need of food and medicine.
For the second evening in a row, Aleppo was largely quiet. And monitors confirm they've recorded no deaths anywhere in Syria in the past 48 hours. What a contrast to last week, when Russian and Syrian planes were dropping bombs on rebel-held Aleppo. We drove into the government side of the city today through suburbs shattered by fighting and heard the occasional rumble of artillery in the distance. This ceasefire is not perfect, but it is good enough that we found repair crews already out on the job tackling the huge task of restoring power. And on both sides of this divided city, the playgrounds were full of kids just being kids. The Turkish government sent a couple of aid trucks a short distance into Syria. But there's been nothing like this where it's most needed, in rebel-held Aleppo, where there were demonstrations today. Opposition fighters and some local people making the point that they don't want aid handouts, they want the siege of their neighborhoods lifted.
3 Phoenix police officers are recovering from injuries after a suspect attacked them with his car. Dramatic surveillance video at the scene shows a driver ramming the officers. 2 of them, you can see one of the officers flying in the air there. 2 of them were hurt when they were hit. The third was injured while capturing the suspect. Michelle Miller is here with a clash that Phoenix Police Chief calls a violent, cowardly act. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. The 3 officers were responding to an assault call, but by the time they arrived, those suspects were gone. And as they stood in a parking lot, police say that's when the driver moved himself into position and ran them over.
Surveillance footage shows the driver slamming into the officer standing in a gas station parking lot early Tuesday morning. Behind the wheel is 44-year-old Mark Laquan Payne. A rookie cop on his first day is launched into the air and crashes through the store window.
The video shows the suspect watching the officers, moving his car a couple of spots in the parking lot, and then ultimately, again, running them down.
One officer has a broken leg. The one thrown in the air suffered a concussion. He was still able to help bring down Payne, who was seen fighting with police and was eventually subdued with a taser.
Why do you run into officers?
Payne faces 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder.
This is a violent, cowardly act, and it's simply unacceptable. Our Phoenix police officers were targeted.
This incident is the latest apparent attack on officers, including the deadly shootings of police in Dallas and Baton Rouge earlier this summer.
We have all heard about officers being targeted and ambushed in communities across this nation, but this happened here. These officers could have easily been killed, and I thank God that we're not planning 3 funerals right now.
A rare tropical storm surprised millions in the southeastern United States. Tropical Storm Julia unexpectedly formed last night just off the Florida coast. It pounded areas around Jacksonville with heavy rain and winds. Some areas, in fact, could see up to a half a foot of rain.
The slow-moving storm dropped up to a half a foot of rain in parts of Jacksonville, Florida. Wind gusts of up to 40 miles per hour whipped trees and rattled stop signs. The downpour flooded roads and sidewalks. At one point, the mayor of Jacksonville was urging people to stay off the road.
U.S. military forces have destroyed an ISIL-run chemical weapons facility in the northern Iraqi city of Mosul. According to military officials, the facility was used to produce lethal chemicals, possibly including chlorine and mustard gas. The airstrikes eliminated more than 50 targets at the site. Currently, more than half of ISIL-controlled territories in Iraq have already been retaken by government forces. However, the twin capital cities of Raqqa and Mosul remain under IS control. U.S. troops are now establishing a logistics hub in the south in preparation for a late-year push to retake Mosul.
Elsewhere in the region, Indian health officials have assured the public that the government is well equipped to battle chikungunya disease. The illness is spread by mosquitoes with symptoms including fever and joint and muscle pains. There's no cure, but it is rarely fatal. Even so, 3 patients died in the Indian capital, New Delhi, on Tuesday. More than 8,000 people are reported to have been affected there this year. The health ministry says it has plenty of testing facilities with doctors and testing protocols in place.
Elsewhere, the Pentagon has admitted that U.S. airstrikes in Syria may have resulted in civilian casualties. According to a statement by the U.S. Central Command, the incidents took place earlier this month. It said U.S. warplanes may have targeted civilians in their attacks near the cities of Raqqa, Deir al-Zawr, and Shadada. 2 non-military vehicles were reportedly targeted in the strikes. The statement did not give the number of dead or injured. U.S.-led aerial campaign in Syria has been criticized for lack of efficiency and high civilian casualties. In July, a U.S. airstrike reportedly killed over 70 civilians, mostly women and children, near Manbij in northern Syria.
All right, the strongest winds in 21 years have torn through Taiwan this week. More than 860,000 homes are now without power. Over 710,000 homes are experiencing water shortages. Local schools and businesses are closed and hundreds of flights have also been cancelled. Water transportation and train services in the east and south of the island are paralyzed. More rain is expected in the south. Flood warnings are out for cities and counties like Kaohsiung and Hualien.
A night of record-breaking destruction. The crumbled grids, uprooted trees, brought down billboards and left much of Fujian province ravaged. Even as the Isle of Meranti departed from the shore, its residual force remained strong and its trail of casualties alarming. 1 fisherman died. Tens of thousands were evacuated from their homes. Many of the roads were unusable.
All the trees on both sides of the street have fallen down. We can hardly pass through. The water is very, very high. No vehicle smaller than mine could possibly pass.
While the full impact of Meranti is still unknown, it's likely much of the damage is beyond repair. An 800-year-old bridge in Quanzhou, a rare cultural relic, was destroyed by the intense flooding. At least 3 other bridges also succumbed. Even as the storm heads north, more rain is forecast in Fujian for the next few days.